All right, good evening, everybody. I'm going to call the September 8th Licensing, Hearings, and Public Safety Committee meeting to order. We'll do roll call. Alder Lefebvre. Here. Alder Boris. Here. Alder Perella. Here. Alder Heidemann. Here. And Alder Rust is present. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Alrighty, I am looking for a motion to approve the minutes from our last meeting. Second. All in favor? Aye. Chair votes aye. That is approved. I don't think we have any public comment today. All right, item number 6, report 16-25-26 by Licensing, Hearings, and Public Safety Committee, submitting findings of fact and conclusions of law based upon testimony and exhibits presented at a quasi-judicial hearing held on August 25th, 2025 regarding the licenses held by J.N. Cortez, LLC, DBA Mi Ranchito 2, license number 3475 in the city of Sheboygan. Assistant City Attorney.
Thank you. So the committee is being asked tonight to formally approve the document that was drafted in response to the quasi-judicial hearing that occurred during the committee's last meeting. Specifically, during that meeting, the committee recommended that the Common Council of the City of Sheboygan take the following actions. 1, revoke the dance hall license number 3475. 2, suspend the Class B and Class B license number 3475 for a period of 90 days for maintaining a disorderly or riotous house in violation of Wisconsin Statute Section 125.12, paren 2, paren AG, paren 2. And 3rd, to suspend the amusement license number 3475 pursuant to Sheboygan Municipal Code Section 6-221 for a period of 90 days because the licensee's establishment has become a source of rowdiness in the neighborhood, a source of frequent complaints to police, and a disruption to good peace and order.
Thank you. Alder Heidemann.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I took the time to watch the meeting. It was riveting. It was one of those things where I thought the city presented their case and the bar owner, they considered their case. But one of the questions that comes to my mind is the fact that we continued to renew their license year after year after year, and they were a problem. Okay, so I'd like to find out why that wasn't expressed to us the last time we renewed their license in June, and then just a couple months later, we're looking to suspend them.
Right. Who would like to take that?
Yeah. Sure. So okay. On behalf of my department, I will own that. Our department has had some turmoil this year, staffing-wise, and the timing of license renewals it wasn't a great time. And so there were concerns raised. Our office discussed those concerns with the police department. We did not feel that we had the time necessary to take action with respect to the license during that renewal cycle. We thought that it would be appropriate to take action, but we really just didn't have the time to do that. If we agreed that if something further came along, that we would, at that point, initiate proceedings for a quasi-judicial hearing. And so when those other issues came to light, then we proceeded, and now we are here. So I apologize on behalf of our department. I will say that we have learned a lot through this process, and we will do better next time.
Okay. Yep. Thank you, Chairman. So am I to think that every other bar that we renewed their license, there might be another business out there that's in the same place that El Ranchito was?
No.
And we just haven't. not a chance.
Not at all. I won't say there's not a chance, right? There are things in the world that I don't know. There are things in the community that I don't know. But what I will tell you is that we have an incredibly open, communicative relationship with the clerk's department and with the police department. And when issues are coming to light, we are talking about them timely. We are developing strategic approaches to those issues. And we are building on our past knowledge and experience to make sure that all future experiences are handled better.
Okay. And now the building's been condemned. And it's my understanding that, again, and I'm not a builder, that she wouldn't be able to open up that business within the next 6 months anyway. So then she would lose her license because she wasn't in operation for 6 months.
That is a possibility.
But we're giving her suspension because we don't know what's going to happen to that building.
Right.
Okay, thank you, thank you.
All right. Chief Semple.
I just wanted to add a little bit to what Liz said and appreciate her comments about it. I think it really was just a question of not good timing, and that some of this was the result of the way things had been managed previously, and the timing of personnel changes, and also the timing of when incidents were happening at the bar. And so I think that's simply how we ended up in the situation that we did. I also just want to answer your question, Alder Heidemann, about whether other bars are in that same situation. We have a lot of bars in Sheboygan, and none of them really are in the same category of issues that we were, like what we were dealing with at Mi Ranchito. And so the short answer is no, there isn't another bar that whose license you renewed that really was having similar problems. There is maybe one other establishment that has had some things happen, but I can tell you the distinction for us has been the response that we get when we approach that business's management about issues that are going on associated with their establishment, and how much more cooperative they are in response. And so hopefully that's reassuring that there isn't another problem out there. That doesn't mean that we might not have to bring another bar in front of you for action against their license if things change. But at this point, that's the situation that we're in.
Thank you, Chief.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Alder Lefebvre.
Well, I just wanted to touch on the fact that the building was condemned, as far as I know. But can we have more enlightenment onto if there is the possibility of that building getting up to code, or is it like 1 foot on a banana peel and the other halfway out the door? You know, this is information that we should have, so that we can, you know, make the determination on whether or not that license is valid.
Attorney Majerus.
Thank you. So to be clear, the scope of inquiry right now is simply affirming the written document conforms to the committee's decision at the quasi-judicial hearing. If the licensee brings the property into compliance, rendering it safe for use, then they could reopen if their license was valid. They could not reopen during their period of suspension. If the licensee wanted to relocate their business, they would have to apply to change the premise, and that application would be heard by this body.
Okay, understood.
Alder Boris.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a question around procedure, I guess. So this came to us previously as a quasi-judicial hearing for suspension or revocation based on the 4 complaints. If at the time of renewal, I think which the last renewal I believe was in June, would we have had a quasi-judicial hearing if we chose to not renew, or could we have chosen not to renew simply based on information that the chief or others may have presented at that point in time?
I believe we would have required, I believe a quasi-judicial hearing would have been required, and that was part of the the friction that we were encountering, because in order to prepare adequately for that type of hearing, which, as you now know, is effectively a trial, you need to have a couple of weeks to develop your outline, to develop your strategic approach to presenting evidence, to document that in a complaint, to have it reviewed by the necessary individuals, and then to have it served on the necessary individuals within the statutory timeframes.
Okay, so we would have, the agenda would have included that quasi-judicial hearing at that point in time when the renewal had come up?
If we could have made that work, yes.
Okay. And then just a question about timing as well. I believe that the original papers were served, I think it was on the 14th, and there was an amendment that was then served, which I think included the dance hall license on the 20th. Or I apologize, I might have my dates a little bit off here, but you had said you need a couple of weeks to prepare the case, right?
Yes.
How long typically would the licensee have for preparation? Because I think, it sounds like the city probably had 2 or 3 weeks, and I think that the hearing between the time the final amended complaint was served was about 6 days?
The statutes require that service be commenced between 3 and 10 days prior to the hearing.
Okay,
How the hearing is scheduled thereafter is a matter for the parties and the committee to schedule.
okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Alder Perella.
Thank you, Chair. Just briefly, one thing is that we should be considering also in response of some of the questions. I think we are responsible here for the decisions we make in regards of the license, but that shouldn't be necessarily associated with the fate of that building, because as we know, the two things are separate, and they could be go separate ways if anything, if so the licensee chooses. And for the sake of the public, I want to clear that this decision was a compromise decision. I would have preferred a much longer suspension. That was not a possibility. I would have preferred to postpone the beginning of these suspensions. That was not a possibility from the statutory legal standpoint as we were advised. And I want to reiterate that although we want to have businesses in our city, we also want them to be managed with responsibility and with safety in mind. And I also want to remind that this same license comes up for renewal in 8 months. And at least from my standpoint, the history of this license will have a weight in my evaluation when that time comes. Thank you.
Alder Heidemann.
Thank you, Chair. So let's say the bar owner finds another place, and they start a business, and they have to serve the 90-day suspension. And they serve the suspension. Do we have the authority at that time to put things in place to make sure? One of the things that bothered me during the hearing was that they were wanting so many days a week, and then they weren't wanting. And then the night they didn't want, somebody got shot. Well, yeah, it's pure luck. So could we put stipulations in, as they did with the Dave's Who's In, after the suspension that they would have to follow? Or could we put saying, okay, you served your 90-day suspension, 1 citation, your license is gone? I mean, obviously I'm not sure if the clientele and the problems that they have on Indiana Avenue are gonna follow this person around. But again, I'd like to make sure that we have something in place that says, listen, we're gonna do everything in our power to make sure that doesn't happen again in another location.
Attorney Majerus.
Thank you. I believe the wanding requirement was part of their designation as a chronic nuisance. Therefore, I would anticipate that any modifications to that wanding requirement would be a result of conversations with law enforcement as it relates to chronic nuisance.
Okay, thank you.
And I would just like to say, I met with Chief Zempel last week, and we had a really great conversation, I think. And I think I learned a lot, especially how to grow as a chair of this committee. And I think the police chief now knows what we're kind of looking for moving forward. If something like this hopefully never happens again, but if it happens, he knows what we're looking for as a committee. And I really appreciate all the work that everybody put into this. It was a long night. So am I looking for a motion to receive?
Motion to adopt or accept the findings of fact and conclusions of law document based upon the testimony and exhibits presented at the quasi-judicial hearing on August 25th.
All right, thank you. And then I'll let Alder Perla speak, and I'll look for a motion.
Thank you, Chair. So can I?
Yep.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to also thank the deputy attorney, city attorney, for owning the what she defined as an oversight at the time. I really appreciate that.
All right, with that being said, I am looking for a motion.
They have a motion to accept?
Yep,
Okay, make a motion to accept.
is that fine?
That would work, and then I can just work with the clerk to clarify the language if there are any questions. And then just as a pleasant reminder, if you could say who makes the motion and who seconds.
Yep.
Thank you.
Alder LaFave made the motion, and Alder Perla made the second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Chair votes aye. That is approved. Item number 7, Charter Ordinance number 3-25-26 by Alderpersons Decker and Perella, being subject to the home rule provisions of State Statute 66.0101 of Wisconsin statutes to authorize primary elections whenever 3 or more candidates file nomination papers for an elective city office. City Clerk.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the same charter ordinance that came before you last year. Basically, we have to make a decision on spring elections for the city. If you want to not do primaries, if you want to do primaries on a case-by-case basis, or this charter ordinance, which would require a primary in February whenever there were 3 or more candidates for a city office.
Any questions? Otherwise, I'm looking for a motion.
Recommend?
Alder Perella makes the motion and Alder Boers seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Chair votes aye. That's approved. Item number 8, General Ordinance number 15-25-26 by Alderpersons Rust and LaFave, amending sections of the Sheboygan Municipal Code related to dog kennel licenses and animal fancier permits. Who's taking that one?
I can.
All right.
So in the course of code enforcement discussions with various city employees, we learned that the city had an ordinance on the books establishing a kennel license scheme that has not been administered for many, many years. We could not identify any current employees that recalled that scheme. We couldn't identify which department was responsible for it because of the way that it was written. So we took that as an opportunity to evaluate the need and do so in the context of our other regulatory schemes. And involved in that decision-making were representatives from administration, planning, police, clerks, and myself. And we agreed that relying on the state approach makes a lot of sense. So that is the approach we'd like to do. And then also we couple that with a new zoning ordinance that was implemented earlier this year or later last year, establishing a commercial use within our zoning code for kennel operations. So this document codifies those discussions, basically.
All right. Any questions? Alder Perella.
could City Attorney just please unpack, what's the difference? I don't understand the difference between, I know I can read was before and what is now, but what is the difference between persons operating a commercial animal boarding facility and persons holding kennel license based on 848? Just the fact that we are referring to the 848? I mean, what's the difference between the two? What is the substantial difference if I am in this business?
There's a distinction without difference. So what this document is proposing is that we repeal Section 8-48, dog kennel license, eliminating the city's program, which functionally did not exist anyway. And relying instead on the restrictions that are in place through the zoning code that require certain standards for sanitation, care, preventing nuisances within the neighborhood of location, et cetera.
And that is referencing state statute? Is that what you said?
There used to be a state statute regulating kennel operations. That statute was modified several years ago. The state does regulate certain animal operations. The city had in place this regulation, but it was not using it. And so we are just simply reverting to the state level of regulation.
Very good. So just to finish, Chair, you don't expect that this impacts in any way any operator, existing operator?
If there are existing operators, they are not licensed anyway. If there are existing operators, they must be in compliance with the zoning code unless they are granted legacy status because their operation existed in lawful compliance prior to the zoning code. I would question whether an entity could have been in lawful compliance without a license when the city had in place a licensing scheme, but I think that's ultimately a discussion for another day.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Alder LaFave.
Yes, how many of these animal holding facilities are operating inside the city right now approximately, or do you know an exact number?
Well, we implemented the zoning ordinance change for one particular facility that was going to be located within Alder Perella's district. I don't believe they moved forward with their business. So I don't believe we have any that, well, I know we don't have any that are licensed. Anecdotally, I think I'm aware of one facility, but I'm not sure if it's within the city or the town.
Okay. But any new entity that would come along on the horizon would have to meet all the criteria for this new ordinance, correct?
They would just have to meet the criteria within the existing zoning ordinance.
Okay. All right.
All right, seeing no other questions, I'm looking for a motion.
To recommend?
Alder Perella makes the motion and Alder LaFave makes the second. All in favor? All opposed? Chair votes aye. That's approved. Item number 9, report 13-25-26 by city clerk submitting a license application. Do we have any questions? Anything to say? No? Any questions? Otherwise, I'm looking for a motion. Alder LaFave makes the motion and Alder Perella seconds. All in favor? Aye. Chair votes aye. That's approved. All right, item number 10, discussion regarding mobile sellers permits. Attorney Majerus.
Thank you. I'll just preface this by saying that I would welcome comments from the city clerk and the police chief, but ultimately this item is being brought forward because we had a request from a member of the business community to create a system in which they could sell goods as well as entertainment via a food truck style setup, like a pop-up setup within the city. And because it's a new program, or arguably a new program, we thought that it would be appropriate to discuss this with the committee as a whole to gauge interest and understand some parameters to guide staff in developing that system. What I'll share is that upon researching the issue, we believe that the current transient merchant system has some room for improvement within the language. The historical interpretation of that program was that you could get a permit to be a transient merchant, which allowed you to amble around the community, moving continuously except during periods of sale. So envision like a hot dog cart and a vendor is walking around our sidewalks. The historical interpretation of our code was that you could have that type of business under the transient merchant program, but that you couldn't park your car in a parking stall on 8th Street, for example, and set up a situation where you are selling yarn or handicrafts or things like that, that you had to always be moving. We've reviewed the ordinance, and that interpretation is not codified. It was just the staff interpretation at the time. So as the committee is discussing this and raising some concerns and identifying some solutions to those concerns, what my takeaway will be is how we can clarify the language to ensure a consistent and fair interpretation that is easily understood by readers of the municipal code as well as by the staff that are tasked with enforcing the code, whatever format that program looks like going forward.
Thank you, Attorney Majerus. Alder Heidemann.
Yeah, I guess with this mobile seller's permit, now we've all been around the community where we see people that are selling things out of their car or whatever, and I don't always, I don't go up there and say, hey, do you have any documentation as to what that you can do? This isn't what that's not what this is meant to take. The discussion's not about those people. It's about, it is, okay, so.
Those people as well as the individuals that have the push carts. So we're generally looking, with respect to mobile sellers or transient merchants, we're generally looking at individuals that are selling outside of the brick and mortar context, and they are not door-to-door selling.
Okay, and so we see some of these people, are we supposed to be asking them for this permit? Do they have to display something that says, I have a permit to do this?
Thank you, Chair. Transient merchants are given a card, just like beverage operators or taxi cab licenses that have their picture on it that does say transient merchant, who they are.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Alder Boris.
Thank you, Chair. A few questions. Would this current program that we have for transient sales, does it apply to food trucks currently?
No, those are separately permitted.
Okay. Does it apply to door-to-door peddlers?
That's the transient, yes.
Yeah, that's the transient. Some communities exempt door-to-door peddlers. They treat them differently. As currently written, they would be bundled, they're currently bundled within this program.
Thank you. I guess just commentary, since this is discussion. In previous experience in other communities that I've lived in the past, that particular peddler's license, if you will, I think it was called a solicitation license or something along those lines, and people were required for any door-to-door sales activity to have one of those. I think the licensure cost was much more minimal than it was for transient sales. And just in terms of pop-ups, if you will, pop-up capabilities, I think it's an amazing opportunity to have a program that supports that in our community. When you think about business startup and where people get their, beginnings early on, a lot of people obviously can't afford to start a brick and mortar location, and being able to sell just strictly from their houses, for instance, isn't necessarily creating the type of market space that they need. So I think having a program that would specifically cater to people who do want to set up somewhere along 8th Street or in a parking lot for a business that they want to work with or things of that nature, I think would be great for us to have something really specifically that's dedicated to that purpose. So I'd be very much in support of it, whatever it ends up looking like. Thank you.
Alder LaFave.
Okay, could we have something inside that if this was like a cart, like a push cart situation, that the seller's permit or whatever, peddler's permit be displayed? Make it so that, we can tell that this is sanctioned, this is licensed, and, it would have to be displayed. Much, kind of like when you're doing renovations on your house, you've got to have the permit displayed. I would like to see it that if you do have these push carts going around, that we would have something displayed that can be visible by the consumers so that they know it's legit.
Yes, we can do that. Meredith is checking. I'm going to check real quick too. I believe that it might already be required.
All right.
While they look, Alder Perella.
I was wondering if, I understand that transient merchants that sell ready-to-eat food or prepared food require a different license, but could a transient merchant sell food, not prepared, like fruit,
With
with the current program?
not with the transient merchant license. That would be handled under the food truck license.
Even if it is not prepared, ready-to-eat food? Like
Right.
if I prepare hot dogs to sell, yes, I understand. If I sell strawberries and melons,
I will double check, but I believe that all consumable food is covered under the food truck permit.
While we wait, I would like to echo, I also agree with Alder Boris. The only hesitation I have is we have to make sure that these places that pop up, places don't impede traffic in any way. I think if they want to do it in a park or when we have food trucks at any of the locations throughout the summer, I think that's a great opportunity as well. As long as it doesn't impede traffic, especially on 8th Street or any of our busier streets, I think this would be a great idea.
So to that, may I ask? Impeding traffic in my mind is not vending from within the lane of travel, but you would be willing to allow vending within a parking stall as long as they're in compliance with the applicable parking regulation?
I think for me personally, I would say, like, let's say they park, we'll just use 8th Street as an example because it's right here. If they were facing the sidewalk and not the street side, then I would say, for me personally, that would be more what I'm looking for because that's not impeding your ongoing coming traffic.
Thank you. Do
Chief
you want
Semple.
to set or consider any time limitations on this type of activity? For example, do you want to say that vending is limited to hours of daylight or, must be concluded by 10 p.m. or something along those lines?
I'll let Chief Zempel speak first and then, is that?
So I just think what's missing from the discussion so far is why the city has the authority to regulate businesses like this. And it's because there are inherent problems and disorder that can come from being too permissive with this type of business. We already have a farmer's market twice a week in one of our parks. We have many craft and art shows throughout the year and different events that allow people, when they participate in a well-managed event, to run a business, essentially a small business or a side craft business like what we're describing here. I think, cities have to remain orderly. That's how municipal life I think works best. And you have to consider the impact of allowing things to become a free-for-all and being too permissive with businesses that can just set up shop anywhere, which creates problems for regulation and holding them accountable when they're able to move around, as opposed to, for example, the chronic nuisance process that's available to us from and gives the city the authority to regulate unsavory or disruptive business practices. I also think that you essentially send the message to property taxpayers in this city that they are at a disadvantage and maybe don't need to actually contribute to the services that the city provides if they just get a wagon and push it down the street and park it in the same place every day. I think that that's something for you all to consider, that there's good reason why these businesses need to be regulated, and that it may not be really in the long-term best interest of the city to just allow this type of business categorically anywhere that they happen to be able to comply with parking regulations. I think we already are planning a discussion with you all about how our food truck ordinance is drafted right now, and the problems that basically minimal regulation of businesses that are transient by nature, that don't really have a connection to the community necessarily, and which end up being a drain on city resources because of the disorder that they create and the safety hazards that they create. I think those are the things that this committee really needs to weigh when it comes to essentially permitting a type of business like this. I don't know where else you would see other than in foreign countries, this type of an operation where people can just push a cart anywhere in a jurisdiction like, or a city like Sheboygan, and be able to just set up shop. And there's a reason for that. We need to be able to have free sidewalks, and we already have issues with traffic in our downtown on sidewalks with scooters and things like that. And so I think the more that you allow for congestion and things like that, I think the more problems come with it. And there needs to be, if it's going to happen, there needs to be the ability for your police department to be able to understand what the regulations are, to communicate them effectively with the business owners, and to be able to hold them accountable to what those regulations are.
Thank you, Chief. So to answer Liz, I'd say daylight hours. And second, I would ask the chief, so then what would, outside of, let's say, just tossing this idea altogether, what would you, as the police department, like to see, you know, as far as like let's say none of this on 8th Street or on Erie or things like that, or none at all? I mean,
well, I guess I would just answer with what our experience has been already with similar types of businesses. So first of all, I know that the city and the Harbor Center Business Improvement District have made retail space available for people who run businesses just like this, as like an incubator to try to get businesses going. And so I really would suggest that maybe there's ways for the city to support that more than just having transient businesses just on the streets or on the sidewalks. If you look at some of the issues that we're having, or complaints that we have about food trucks at Volrath on Monday nights, there is no one business that's willing to take responsibility for that event and pull a permit and ask for a street closure and all the things that would really allow the city to have no one willing to take insurance out to manage that. And so all those things are opportunities for the city to ensure the safety of those types of events. If you end up with a similar type event where people, because they have a transient merchant permit, can, every night there's a night market at a particular location, but it just happens organically because again, no one business is willing to take responsibility for that. I think you're going to run into the same kinds of problems. And so I think there's probably an avenue for this. Three Sheeps runs a night market a couple of times a summer. We have other events like this that I think really allow for that interaction between small businesses and our community members, but also allow for that event to be well-run and to make sure that it's done with really good business practices and the safety of the community in mind.
Thank you. With that being said, I personally, for current purposes, I would withdraw my support, I guess, for a mobile seller's permit. Alder Boers.
Thank you, Chair. I won't reverse my statement from earlier, but what I will say is I think that there are definitely regulations that can be put in place to ensure that we don't run into some of the concerns that the chief was stating. Hours of operation, for instance, frequency of operation, specific locations within the city that would not be allowed, insurance requirements. I think that there, you mentioned something along the lines of people coming in from outside and pushing a cart. Maybe they have to be a county or a city resident or something of that nature. Maybe the applications have to be approved by this committee and have to be seen as a benefit to the community. I think that there are multiple opportunities, as you had mentioned, where people with businesses of this nature do have the opportunity to operate. But I would also say that, if you think about like a mom who has kids in school, for instance, she may have summers open to participate in some of those events, but during the school year, she might want to be able to go downtown in the middle of the day or to a street in her neighborhood or something of that nature, and it may not work for her to participate in night markets or things of that nature. So I think that there are enough restrictions that we could put in place, guidelines, whatever you want to call that we could still offer this as an opportunity in the community. And again, if we were given the opportunity to potentially approve these licenses the same way that we do liquor licenses, for instance, that we could have a modicum of control over that as well. Thank you, Chair.
Chief? Oh, well, I'll let Chief speak, then I'll let Alder Decker speak.
Just one follow-up, Alder Boers. I certainly agree that that's my point of raising these things, is that, again, there's a reason why the city has the authority that it has to regulate these types of businesses. And if there are reasonable regulations, then maybe it's manageable. I would point out that what you described, the process, also involves a lot of work for city staff as well to review and approve and present applicants as well. And so when you're considering a license fee, I think that's one of the things that needs to factor into that decision as well.
Yep.
Alder Decker.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a quick comment. As I was listening to this, I was kind of came up with some things that I thought of. One of the things that I was concerned about would be our standalone businesses themselves. I mean, what if we had, what if someone took an ice cream cart and parked it on the street in front of Blast? I don't think that the people of Blast would be very, they pay taxes, they have a brick and mortar store. They spend a lot of money to be here. Same thing with South Pier. It's one of those businesses. What if it's a clothing store and someone's selling clothing in front of it? I mean, that's the issue that I would have. I would be very concerned about something like that happening. That's why I would not be in support of it. So, thank you.
Thank you, Alder Decker. Alder Perella.
Yeah, I was thinking along the same line. So it is something that we have to consider. I'm open to the idea. However, I would really like to have the police department to being fully cooperating with drafting the possible regulations, that trying to come up with solutions that that favor a cautious approach, that such as the one that the chief was presenting. I also was thinking that there are some areas of the city which I personally consider is sort of little foods desert, and I think that some, especially food selling is allowed. I would see that as a little solution for some areas. So I favor the idea. I just know that it is true that we need to draft it in a way that is limiting the possible safety unexpected consequences.
Alder Boris.
Thank you, Chair. To Alder Decker's comment, I would say that that's another thing that we could look at. I think competition is healthy for businesses and it improves standards and gives us more variety of choices. And we could certainly have restrictions such as you cannot operate within 100 feet of a business of a similar nature or something of that, along those lines. So again, I think that it's should be manageable through the regulations and the guidelines that are provided if we allow something like this to happen. Thank you.
Anybody else? Attorney Majerus.
Thank you. We have a perimeter limitation for food trucks. So you can't be within a certain linear feet from food trucks. And we require that food truck vendors maintain a wheel tape to measure that distance if law enforcement asks them to. But this conversation has been really helpful for me to get some framework of ideas, and I can work with the police department to develop a draft that we can present to you for future discussion.
All right. Seeing no other cues, our next meeting date will be September 22nd, 2025. I'm looking for a motion to adjourn. Alder LaFave made the motion. Alder Boris made the second. All in favor? Aye. Chair votes aye. We're adjourned at 5:15. Thank you, everybody.